done more homework than me.
I don't think so.
I think we did different homework. Like I played around a little bit more. You kind of read and looked at stuff.
Yeah.
Cool, we're live.
I played a bit.
So, hello everyone. I'm going to do that again. Just every line I restart. Hey, welcome to the Tellr Podcast, first episode. I'm here. My name is Andrew. I'm the founder of Tellr. I'm here with my good friend Codi.
Hey.
And we're going to explore a little bit today and talk about SocialFi, which is an interesting topic. There's
Web3 Social.
Web3 Social, Decentralized Social, many names for it.
And no definition.
Yeah, no definition. Well, that's what maybe we can talk about that a bit first. What's Web3 Social? What's SocialFi for you?
Well, I went through a little bit of a backflip on this. Initially, I was thinking that SocialFi and Web3 Social were different because I thought social finance, so I thought it maybe had more related to like trading or some kind of like financial speculation, kind of like friend-tech or something. Mm-hmm. And then I thought Web3 Social was just like essentially like standard Web2 social networks, but with Web3 functionality, you know, more ownership, NFTs, things like that. So, but then after talking to you, having a bit of a chat before this, I think maybe it's all just one big bucket and I have no idea. So,
yeah, I think we can agree on the lack of clarity around that term. Yeah. And it's still developing, which is why there's a lack of clarity, I think.
Is that because we're still early?
Yeah, we're still early. Too early, probably. Most people don't care about this.
Yeah, true.
But because my perspective is probably like a little bit too large or grandiose. I just think there's an argument to be made that like all of these things in Web3 are kind of SocialFi. Like everything from the apps we're going to talk about today that are very clearly Web3 social media to like the metaverse being SocialFi and PFPs being SocialFi. But I know people listening to this, including yourself, are like, that's a fucking stupid way to think about this because it makes it more confusing and harder to be pointy with what we're talking about. So for the sake of this conversation today, I'll throw my stupid thoughts aside. And I think we just try to focus on some of the applications and protocols that are being built that enable social media on blockchain.
Okay. Yeah, I think if you like restrict the requirements, like they'll get more pointy, like you said. But if you open it up, then PFPs are SocialFi.
Yeah,
so it's metaverse, you know. So no, I get where you're coming from there.
So I think, you know, we've been exploring these apps, not enough.
Yeah.
You know, we're no experts, by the way. No. We're just having some fun, and I think we're both just interested in Web3 and the developments there. I'm super interested from the perspective of the creator economy and just tooling for creators to, you know, own their work in a more, you know, robust way and engage with their audience in a more direct way and to monetize their work more transparently and just directly.
And that's because you are a creator.
That's because I am a creator.
Yeah.
And I want to get filthy rich off of NFTs, which is, you know, I'm living in 2021 still.
Yeah.
So I think like, you know, so now we've kind of established SocialFi as a little bit vague, you know, applications built on blockchain meant for social media. And I think we can make a lot of like almost one-to-one comparisons today. It was like this, like Tape.xyz is trying to be the YouTube of Web3, and Sound.xyz is trying to be the Spotify of XYZ. So I think maybe making some of those direct comparisons will be helpful a little bit, so we can just like have a little bit of a one-to-one and compare the value. And
we can play with both those platforms, I believe. So like you'll have a good idea of that. I know there's a couple of projects trying to be the Web3 YouTube or the Web3 Spotify, a streaming service, you know?
That's one of the things, like after digging in for the last few days and just, you know, being in the space and paying attention to things for a few years, that the things that's most interesting to me is there are so many applications and so little users. It's like everyone's just trying to build these apps, but there's no real, you know, established community ecosystem in many of these apps. A few of them have some pretty like heavy users, which we'll talk about, or heavy in the context of Web3.
And is that because the use case isn't there? There's no benefit in having them? Or is it because the friction to get onboarded is so difficult? I think that's one big thing that kind of comes up when I look at all this.
Totally. I mean, my perspective is the friction, I would say. But I'm sure people could argue the opposite and say that the use case isn't really there yet. But again, from my biased perspective of a creator, an artist, I think the use case is really clear. It's just,
I don't think it makes you biased. I think it gives you kind of more gumption in like your decision. You know what I mean? You have more in the fight. You know what I mean?
this is why I invite you to the podcast, so you can shill me to all the people watching who are already skeptical of everything I'm saying. So,
well, yeah, I mean, I've known the guy for a long time, and he, fantastic, hard worker, creative.
let's not go down this direction of blowing smoke up my
That's it. But I still see that some of this stuff is like, it's either we are way too early and we haven't worked out the use cases, or we've overshot and it's not required.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm still kind of making my mind up about it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that perspective, and I agree. Most 90% of this stuff is garbage. And
It's cool to be able to mint a song as an NFT, but you know, where else does that go? Man?
yeah, exactly. It was like, what's the distribution? Like, are people actually seeing it? Because in terms of like eyeballs, it makes no sense for me to try, if I'm focused purely on eyeballs as a musician, let's say, I might as well spend my time on YouTube and Twitter and Spotify and trying to grow those channels, because that's where everyone is.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do think there's some opportunity in Web3 to lay some groundwork, be an early mover, and potentially just help set a blueprint for what's possible with some of these tools. So there's way too many tools. We kind of both agree on that, given the lack of users.
Yeah.
Just to like boil this down, I think given that there's so many tools, there's really only two protocols that have established themselves, and maybe it helps to like explain the protocol level versus the client level.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there might be more, but these two are definitely the standout. There's a lot of like Lens versus Farcaster versus Lens, information and data out there. So yeah.
Exactly, and you just named them the two prominent ones. So we have Lens protocol and we have Farcaster. And to just explain the difference to explain what a protocol is. So the protocol level is essentially like the composability, like tool. It's the tools, the toolkit, the SDKs, all the tech layer that
operating system,
the operating system.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That developers can then go and build applications, clients on top of these protocols.
Yeah.
So the two dominant protocols at this moment, and as you said, there are others, but seemingly within SocialFi, Lens and Farcaster.
Yeah.
And based on what I've seen, it seems like a lot more people are building on Lens. Like Farcaster, unless I've just missed some things, I haven't candidly gone too deep down. I've started playing with Warpcast, which is the most dominant social media app on Farcaster.
Yeah.
But Lens, there's a whole bunch of stuff being built, and I just see a lot more development activity.
Look, I'm not an expert. I haven't, and I've just really kind of looked into some things to prepare a bit for the pod. But from what I see is Lens puts their developer community apps up front as like when you come in, you create your Lens ID or your Lens profile, then straight away there's access. But from an onboarding perspective with Farcaster, you come and they direct you to Warpcast. Mm-hmm. So maybe they've gone deeper in trying to get people on one tool instead of spread users out across multiple tools. That app, sorry, not tools.
Yeah.
So that could be one reason why.
And that would definitely be a smart strategy, because when I first started exploring Lens and I made my Lens profile, my handle, there's like 12 or 15 odd apps that they direct you to. Yeah. And some of them are just super confusing once you open them up and immediately just make me want to go away. Whereas others feel more intuitive, probably because they're like they're just almost clones of existing
Yes.
social apps. So before we even dig into this, because there's a few apps I think are worth exploring, just talking about the value proposition.
And maybe explain the profile or the lens, and kind of like creating your profile and picking that up, and the composability. Maybe
Yeah, and that's exactly aligned with talking about that's one of the value props, right?
Yeah.
So in Web2 social media, the social media we all know and hate or love, but in Web2 social media, the platform are the gatekeepers, right? They set all the rules of engagement. They have the ability to shadow ban you and remove your content and take your profile away. There's like a famous story of on Twitter, on X, the @music handle.
Yeah.
Somebody created that handle long ago, and it was just taken from them because the platform wanted to own it.
Yeah.
And that user had no control of that, despite having already claimed their handle. So in Web3, there's a lot more ownership there. So your handle you actually own in the form of an NFT that lives in your wallet, right? So no one can just take it from you. You can sell it or give it away or trade it for something. But it's yours to own and do with what you please, and it cannot be removed from you unless you willingly give it up. And there's a lot of value in that, because along with that handle comes your audience, comes your content. So you really start to have full ownership of the work you're doing on social media. So you could take your handle on Lens, and like I said, they have 15 odd apps, probably more at this point, and it's portable, so you can take it from, let's just say, Hey, which is like a Twitter clone, hey.xyz. You could you write your tweets, post some content, and then you can port your same handle over to T2, which is a blogging platform, and you could write a blog, and your audience moves with you too. So just that true ownership of the experience and the work that you're doing, I think, is massive from the creator perspective, because I've worked in the cannabis industry, and even like Web3, there's like a lot of shadow banning and trying to eliminate content visibility because you're creating in an industry that's a little bit, not safe, or, there's, people don't find it family friendly, which is fair, but it sucks having that in the back of your head. Okay, these things that I'm working on can just be removed from me at any point, and I don't really own it. So that value proposition is super clear.
That could be a double-edged sword, though, with the illicit content, or someone shilling weapons or doing something kind of. So that comes down to a governance issue, I guess. But I haven't gone deep enough into it. But I can see that could also be a double-edged sword.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and there may be, again, this gets back into our lack of true expertise around all these things. Like these platforms, these Web3 platforms could potentially still remove posts. Like if you post something really,
I think
violent.
It would be a community decision. I think. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't gone into that. But I would think that it would be a community-driven thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe early on, it's not. Maybe it's still held by the team, which would make a lot of sense early on, I think, to make those decisions.
Yeah, just create a safe space for people.
Yeah, I mean, at least in the early days, until they figure out how the, community spam flagging and all that works,
Yeah.
But the transport ability of the audience across the different platforms, that's pretty cool. So I get that.
Yeah, so like these days there's so many platforms, it becomes a headache to manage them all. But if you have kind of one handle that can disseminate information and broadcast across multiple platforms, your audience stays consistent across those platforms. Yeah. But also you can grow, like if you grow your audience on T2, the blogging platform, that means they're also coming with you over to hey.xyz. So it's like different channels to grow your audience, yet it's all connected. Are there any other benefits that you feel are worth kind of exploring? We talk about like identity ownership, audience ownership.
Well, the composability of the platform, I guess, as well. If it's open source and all the people can contribute by building different modules or components, and then they can kind of stack on top of each other, and then they can read each other. I don't know what it means right now, but I believe it means for the future that there's like exciting things that can happen with more people playing with, building different Lego pieces. You know what I mean? Cool shit can come out of it.
Yeah. I'm sure for developers, super interesting to be able to explore that. Maybe can you talk a bit about some of like what's composable within these platforms?
Well, I just know that look, I haven't gone deep enough into it, but I just know that, like, for example, the profiles. You can build different applications that can look into the data that's held within these profile. That might mean like audiences, what things people are following. I've seen some cool June dashboards that are like aggregating like search terms and tickers, like for speculation across at the infrastructure layer or the protocol layer. So like being able to search across everything. And then also now there's things Farcaster or Warpcaster, they call it frames. I don't know what they call it in Lens, but essentially being able to build small games or mint NFTs or do gated or tip or gated content right inside the social platform without taking them somewhere else.
Right in the post even.
Right within the post.
Yeah, which is super cool because you can, there's like the kind of, I think what I would call like core Web3 functionality of like minting something. So you make a post, let's say it's a video, you post it, somebody could mint that as an NFT and then they own it as an NFT, and you could set the terms and conditions as the creator for that. But also like there's crypto swaps that you can embed into these. So like, let's say you're accepting tips in Bonsai token, which is the crypto for Lens, but a lot of users don't have that maybe. So you can put a swap right in your post that says, swap your Matic or whatever into Bonsai, and then that enables your audience to then immediately make that swap and then tip you in the currency that you want. Just a small example of that composability.
Yeah, I mean, these things bring up like security concerns in my head straight away. Like if you can shill something and then have a link in it, and instead of even taking them out to a different page, have them perform some type of wallet transaction within. Is there, or I don't know, there might be a safety layer in there. It might be baked into the way that it's set up. But that would just flag straight away, like be careful with what you're clicking, especially if there's wallet interactions happening.
Yeah.
But maybe it's at the profile level. So it's at the profile level, so it's not actually dipping into your core wallet. Maybe you're creating like a wallet, and that's so. Anyway, I don't know enough about that.
Yeah, but that's a good point. Is like there's a
don't go clicking links yet unless you know.
Yeah, immediately drain your wallet. Yeah, be safe out there and look into best practices for all these platforms because we definitely don't know everything.
No, but I haven't been drained yet.
Yeah, good, cool. So something to look forward to, I guess.
Yeah.
One other benefit before maybe, because we've mentioned a few of these apps and protocols and we'll go deeper, but one other benefit that is interesting for me and I think maybe interesting for other creators, and you've talked about it, is like the small pond opportunity.
Yeah.
It's when you go to Twitter and Instagram, any of these major platforms, there's millions and millions and millions of users, and it's difficult to build an audience to get visibility with what you're posting. So in some of these Web3 apps, there's much less users. We're talking about tens of thousands, right? So potentially creating content there consistently and building a community there becomes a little bit easier because there's less people that have to create content. So you're just you have the opportunity to maybe stand out a little bit more. Still has to be great content, but I think that's an interesting value proposition for early movers. But the double-edged sword of that is there's so many applications to choose from. Who knows what's going to be dead in a year, 2 years, 3 years. So if you spend all your time building on one of these Web3 social apps and it just collapses, then...
However, you should be able to port your audience over.
Yes, great point.
So that maybe they knew that. Maybe they knew all these apps, 90% are going to die. So let's make sure people can take...
That's a fantastic point, really. Like, because as long as like Lens protocol, for example, lives on, all the apps that are currently built there right now could die, but maybe one in a year, a month, or whatever takes over.
I don't know enough about the inner workings of Lens versus Farcaster. I looked at some June dashboards on who has more users, who has more power users, how many accounts have been generated and things like this, how many posts, interactions. But as far as like how decentralized one is and how the inner workings, I'm not quite sure.
Maybe you can speak to some of your findings from comparing the two in terms of users and engagement.
Oh, I'd have to refer.
And maybe while you
refer, I know that I don't know which one's been around longer. I think it's Lens, and Lens had much more users earlier on. So from the tracking that I see, and this could be. We can put the dashboard maybe in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll include a link.
But the long tail, or like from when it started, Lens had a lot more users earlier on. Farcaster had very low amount of users, and I looked into why, and I think it was because it was invite only, and you had to be invited by the founders. So they were like heavily curating the early set of users on it. And it wasn't until recently that it had a big uptick.
Yeah, January.
Yeah, and it's had such an uptick now that it's nearly matching Lens for daily active users.
Yep.
Now, Lens daily active users are spread across a variety of apps. It looks like Farcaster, it's more kind of concentrated on Warpcast. However, some of these numbers could be bullshit because they could just be bots running in the background, creating interactions and doing things on chain to boost the numbers. So you just have to be a little bit wary of that.
Always think critical and try to dig in. I think an interesting metric is just looking on social media and seeing who's talking about what.
Yeah.
Because you can kind of see like the real users and the real content that's being shared there. With Farcaster, so we're in 2024 right now. In January of earlier this year, according to Dune, there were about 2,000 daily active users in Farcaster, and that spiked massively. And now today, in July of 2024, there are around 50,000 daily active users. So yeah, massive spike recently. But also at the same time, like according to Doom, you can see a big drop in active users and engagement in parallel with the market. So like when Bitcoin started to dump in April or May, we've kind of been on a slow dump ever since then. And it's directly correlated to the number of users in Farcaster have directly correlated to the Bitcoin dump. So for example,
it's still trending up though.
I saw like platform engagement drop down. Yeah. So
that might have something to do with airdrops. So
that's a great point too.
Disclosure, both platforms had airdrops. So some of this engagement is farmed.
Yep. And that's so important to think about that too, because that's just such a massive incentive right now for using these apps. It's just the money, the quick money you could make. There's really, from a lot of these people, there's very little interest in actually using the application. It's like, let me use it, try to get an airdrop, and then go to the next airdrop opportunity. And I think, it's an interesting situation for the state of the industry overall, because it's kind of like a project's worst nightmare to like have a bunch of users come in for an airdrop opportunity and then completely go away once that's gone. Like that's not what projects want.
Yeah, look, this is just where we're at right now in crypto and Web3. There's so much that could be said about airdrops and like whether they're good, not the good, the bad, and the ugly. One thing is, though, from playing around, I didn't really go as deep on playing with the platforms. But if we do a follow up from this, I will make more of an effort to go and do some posts and things. But the small, like you said earlier, the big fish in a small pond.
Yep.
And also maybe the access to other creators. So, or not just creators, but other people in the industry. So if you're in Web3, other people in Web3 will be kind of at these watering holes. And I think it's easier to talk to, you know, someone maybe on one of these platforms because they don't have as many people shilling them dog shit in the comments.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's also this relates to that, the aspect of like, if people really are super bullish on some of these platforms and they know they kind of want to build there for the long term, they're incentivized to help other creators and engage in these platforms. So it's like, because like rising tide lifts all ships, right?
Yeah.
So it's similar to when you see like meme coins and, you know, NFT collections. Like if you create some content around these collections, often the community will help propel it because their investment potentially increases alongside the content being created. So it's interesting to see that play out within the social media platforms as well. So maybe let's talk about a few platforms specifically.
Yep.
So we talked about the 2 protocol levels. So let's just start with Lens protocol.
So imagine the protocol layer is what everything's built on top of.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of apps on Lens, and I didn't explore all of them. A few of them quickly caught my attention, and I went deeper into those by creating on them. So what caught your attention out of the Lens apps?
Look, I was looking purely for something cool that I could play with. However, one thing I found was that I have to download an app for most of it. And I'm just not going to be downloading a lot of apps. I will play around with Warpcaster and maybe I'll download 1 or 2 more. But it seems like every single one of these, or not every single, but most of these were directing me to go download something. I just don't want to.
You're probably like I don't know if outlier. You're an outlier, but I mean most people download apps, right? So it makes sense that these applications are creating mobile apps. As a Web3 user, though, most of us are
against Web3.
Yeah. So it's this weird friction for. It's interesting to make a friction point for already native Web3 users in downloading an app, where usually the friction is from the Web2 user trying to come in.
Yeah. Look, yeah, that's a good point. I could be wrong.
I
mass adoption, they want the apps, right? However, the app stores are the ones that can block them, bar them, stop them. So I don't know. Plus, I just don't like having lots of apps on my phone.
It's interesting because I'm honestly pretty similar with you with that. Like as I started to explore these things, the first ones I jumped into, the ones where I could just connect my wallet and on my laptop and play around right there without having to download anything on my phone. I guess maybe to jump into a couple of those that caught my attention. I mean, so there's hey.xyz, which honestly, interesting, sure. It's just it's like a Twitter clone, right? So
I wrote Twitter but shitter.
Twitter but shitter, yeah. That's exactly it. It seems like a cheap Twitter, but it has the Web3 functionality where you can tip creators and you can mint posts as NFTs and you can upload all types of content.
I think it aggregates too, right? Like some of these other, like it aggregates like you can get your Warpcaster feed and your
Twitter feed,
something feed and your, together.
Yep.
There's a couple that do that.
Yeah. So that's,
Butterfly also does that.
Butterfly, I downloaded on my phone and then I didn't follow through on the setup process.
Yeah. The Firefly, which there's only a waiting list right now, that looks kind of cool. Like, I don't know, it's got this kind of like 8-bit vibe kind of, I like it. But there's only waiting list right now and you have to like go and shill it to move up the waiting list and things.
Yeah. The two that just direct to it, the two that caught my attention the most on Lens are T2 World and Tape.
Yeah.
And so T2 World is a blogging platform, call it a Web3 medium. And they have a very interesting concept where in order to join communities and contribute and pretty much amplify your blogs, you need to earn time points. And in order to earn time points, you need to read content.
Yeah.
So I think that mechanism is super interesting because it forces people who want to contribute to actively engage and partake in the ecosystem content exchange. So I think that's conceptually super interesting. And it, usually like it's become such a common thing. You look at anyone who's reading Medium, 5-minute read time, 10-minute read time. And sometimes that can feel like a burden. They put that information on there maybe to like just show you this is what you're getting into.
Yeah.
This flips it a little bit and it makes it feel like an opportunity because it's like, I could spend 10 minutes reading this. I'm going to gain 10 time points.
Yeah.
And then I can access this community that costs time points to access. So I think that's super interesting and it makes it feel more exclusive and it forces you to contribute in order so you don't just go in there and spam a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, nothing crazy about T2 World to me. That's the mechanism that's like, okay, this is cool. Because when I posted a blog there,
it's kind of like a Reddit function a little bit, but it's based on time spent, like dwell time on the page.
Yes. Yeah. And technically, I'm sure you could just like, roll your eyes back in your head and pretend to scroll through the page and earn your time points. Yeah. But
let's create a bot and just get the most time points we can.
Yeah. Masters of time. Time rats.
Can you use the time points for anything other than setting up and claiming your niche, would you say?
Yeah, so you can access, they call them territories, which are really just like subreddits.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure users can create their own territory. I don't have that access right now. I just started. I posted one blog on there yesterday to explore a bit, and I earned like 8 time points. I'm saving up for 10 time points so I can go access a territory that costs 10 time points that I'm interested in. So
you can't read them without the time points?
Yeah, you can access that, but once, and you can't broadcast there either. So, let's say there's like a philosophy, there's a whole bunch of territories. So there's a philosophy territory. Let's say you want to reach an audience of users who are interested in philosophy for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You got to read to get into that community.
Read some science before you get in or something.
Yeah, right.
Religion.
Anything that's kind of open.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I think, as we do more follow-ups to this and we explore more, it'll be interesting because I haven't dug deep enough. But yeah, T2, interesting blogging platform. And there's other competitors to that in Web3, right? I think the most common is mirror.xyz.
Yeah.
That's been around for a while. Just started exploring paragraph.xyz, which maybe we'll talk about. But
I think they bought Mirror.
Paragraph did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or there's some acquisition. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. And then the Mirror team went to build something else on Lens.
Yeah. Just exploring those 3, Paragraph seems the most robust to me.
Yeah.
But I love that time point aspect.
Yeah, okay. It's unique, yeah.
But when I made a post, I couldn't embed a link to an NFT that I wanted to. So it's the composability of it is very limited. It's like you could write some text. You can't really put much in there. So yeah, that's T2 World.
So T2 World, the time aspect, you like the way that the points are accumulating. You can unlock different subreddits or different territories, right? But that's at the application layer. Maybe Lens add this time point kind of calculations into their underlying protocol, and you could then in the future accumulate time points and then open a philosophy channel on a different app.
Yep.
And that would be the composability of the whole thing.
Yep.
Just for people that are still trying to figure out what the hell's going on.
Yeah, well, like us.
Like us, yeah.
Yeah, that's
but I could see that might, something like that could happen.
Yeah, and that points to a very interesting topic, which is like, realistically, the most fascinating and interesting apps have not really probably been built yet.
Exactly.
It's like we're just scratching the surface, and we're still so stuck in this Web 2 mindset, which is why all these things really just feel like, the same. It's like the Web 3 version of existing Web 2 platforms, just shittier.
Yeah.
So as soon as developers really start to play around and unlock some really cool functionality. I think we don't even know what this is going to turn into yet. So just the other thing on Lens that I want to talk to, and then we can maybe move on, is just Tape. So tape.xyz. The comparison here is Tape is trying to be the YouTube of Web3. So you upload video content. Something interesting with Tape, and also just on Lens protocol as a creator. So I posted a video on Tape, and there's really cool functionality. This gets into the value proposition and the ownership potential. So I can I could post my video, and I can just post a video, but I could also make it a collectible NFT, and I could set how many editions there are. You know, maybe it's just a one of one and only one person can buy this for 1 Ethereum, or I can make 10,000 of them and sell them for, you know, a fraction of an Ethereum, you know, $1 US equivalent, something like that. So the customization is there in terms of the content and the monetization. But even more interesting and fun, you can split revenue right at the smart contract layer. So let's say I post a video and there's a few different contributors who help me produce that video. I can put their wallet addresses right into the post, the smart contract there, and when fun, and I can allocate percentages. So when people mint that NFT, you know, the revenue is being shared across all of the creators, which I think is great, and something that Web 2 is.
Okay, it's not as easy.
Yeah. And then also, pretty much commissions. So let's say I'm a creator, I post my video, I have an audience. If somebody in my audience reposts that video and their audience starts to mint my NFT, and I can attribute the purchases of my NFT to this member of my audience who reposted it, this member of my audience can earn a percentage of that revenue. And I can set that. So I can say, okay, anyone that reposts this and it leads to a sale gets 10%, 15%. So you're also incentivizing your audience to share your content and broadcast it and earn a little bit. So I love that too. And you see that same functionality across a few of these Lens.
Well, one question with the Tape, say I want to sell 10 editions of something. Can other people view the content, or I can completely close it off?
On Tape, I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure everyone can view everything.
Okay, but then I just own it.
Then yeah, you just own it, and you know, your audience can own it. And it doesn't, you know, I think so many people, especially in the mainstream, if you've heard about NFTs, you think they're this like way overpriced, hyped up JPEG. But you know, it doesn't need to be that way. I listed mine for half a Matic. So it's like 25 cents right now.
Wow.
to mint this video.
22 cents.
22 cents, yeah. We'll toss up the technical analysis.
No, I'm considering selling my Matic bags at the bottom.
Yeah.
Like a true legend. No.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about that, but there are paragraph.xyz, kind of jumping around a little bit. That's another blogging style platform. So similar to T2 World, similar to Mirror. Paragraph.
Which is similar to Medium.
And you just mentioned that Mirror might have acquired Paragraph. So maybe there's
I think it was the other way around.
Paragraph acquired Mirror.
Something like this.
I played around this morning with Paragraph, and really, you know, you could do a lot with those blog posts compared to T2 World. I can embed tweets, I can embed YouTube videos, I can embed a gated section to the blog. So maybe the intro is not gated, and then I gate the second half of the blog.
Yeah, I like that.
And you can gate with, you could customize the gating. So the gate could be free, and the only thing that the user needs to do is subscribe to your page, and then they can access it. Or you can, you know, gate based on what's in their wallet or what they can verify. So if they hold a certain token or an NFT, you can confirm that they hold that asset, and then they can access the content. So I think interesting from a community building aspect, and just adding value to other communities. Let's say I make a video and I only want Pudgy Penguins holders to be able to see it. I can post it there. And yeah, I think that's super interesting, and makes me excited to play more with Paragraph compared to the other blogging platforms.
Okay, good.
I've been talking a lot.
Yeah. Well, you played with a few more than I did. I mean, I pretty much went through and I just kind of like looked at all the different apps on Lens. So that they were showing up in the when you onboard to Lens. I created a Lens profile, I don't know, a long time ago because I don't know. I thought maybe there was an airdrop, or I'm not quite sure exactly why I did. So I went back and
You're part of the problem.
Yeah, I'm part of the problem. So I went back and I logged in. I tried to create a new profile on a new wallet because I didn't want to connect this wallet. But then I needed more Matic, so I needed to send Matic. So I just went back to the original one.
Talk about user friction.
Talk about user friction, even from someone who considers themselves like crypto native. It's just like a little bit annoying. Download, apps on your phone, connect them with wallets, different chains now.
Yep.
You needed something on Base to post somewhere, So it's just kind of like. So I looked at Hey, I looked at Firefly, Butterfly, Dumpling. Dumpling was weird.
Is that the one where it's like a TV?
Yeah, it's like a TV in the middle of a channel.
I saw that and I immediately jumped.
I thought that'd be your jam, man. I thought it was like flicking channels on an old TV set. There was some weird Japanese stuff going on there. And then there's this Favor, right? It's spelled with PH. That one is got a lot of the active users on one of the protocols. I can't remember which one.
That's a Lens.
No, I think it's both though.
Okay, it's one of the aggregate ones.
Yeah. That one's heavily funded. Binance, linked with Binance funding and stuff like that. Orb Club, it's like music NFT marketplace. There's some like region-specific Twitter clones. Zerf was one. One I thought was interesting was like a browser extension called Mask. And I looked at it because, again, it was on the computer and I could just download the extension as opposed to download an app. However, there's only 422 users on the downloads for the application. So I thought, this is not good, so I didn't do it.
So lots of apps there.
Lots of apps.
Would you say you're bullish on Lens in terms of like what can be built there in the future and what will be built there? Are you still unsure? What are your just overall?
Overall, I don't know which one. I'm bullish on a long enough time frame with these underlying protocols. As long as the token that they release doesn't fuck up the economies somehow. Yeah. Because often a token can just kind of throw a spanner in the works. But I don't know how the token sits. But I think that it's open source, right? Like these open source communities with Web3 functionality, and there's going to be cool shit built at some point. That's kind of like the simple thing that I believe. Yeah, at some point. So right now you're not too excited or interested in going too deep into this, just as a user in general. Well, for me, as a user, I want to reduce my time on social media, not increase it. Twitter is like a black hole for me, so I try and, but I'm not really a hugely positive contributor to any of these. It's not really where I sit. So Twitter would still be a favorite. If I was trying to build myself up in the Web3 space, I might consider trying to do this whole bigger fish in a smaller pond situation and build relationships with people inside the Web3 space. I think it'll be easier to get a hold of them. Yeah. So I'm quite interested to explore, and right now I'm unsure whether it's like how far out we really are from more significant adoption of these things. Yeah. And I'm unsure, to your point, like which of the apps will survive, but protocol wise, I think there's definitely something here. Absolutely. So anything about, we've jumped around a little bit. We've talked about Lens, we've talked about Farcaster. Anything you want to add to the conversation about either of those protocols or the apps being built there? Well, I'd say there's not just those two. Yep, right? For sure. There's a whole bunch of other stuff coming out, or that is out, and I don't see that slowing down. There's this new kind of what is it? What was it? Consumer crypto movement, which is just kind of like a marketing narrative thing that's coming out.
It's just it's just admitting that there's no
actual consumers.
Yes. It's like we need to create this other niche that's actually really supposed to be the whole thing.
Actually for people. Yeah. But so I do think that SocialFi will kind of like interlink with that. I think that things like friend tech, which we didn't talk about, friend tech will continue in a bull market to be somewhere that people spend their leftover winnings. You know, because one thing within crypto with the cycles is when people start cashing out and they have crypto and it's kind of all upside for them, where do they spend their crypto? And I think last cycle it was kind of like NFTs. I had a theory that this cycle it would be a lot more gambling, like things like poly markets or Rollbit or things like that. But it could also be on this social stuff. So more tipping, heavy tipping of people.
Do you think, I don't want to, because you mentioned Polymarket, is that SocialFi? And maybe you could talk about what Polymarket is a little bit to the audience.
I don't think it would, if you were just drawing lines and narratives and one project had one categorization, I don't think it would be SocialFi.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I don't think that the sandbox would be SocialFi. I think that would be metaverse or metaverse game, you know, depending on the categorization. But Polymarkets is huge. It's a huge in-between app that it's a consumer. It's the biggest consumer facing, I think, because it's bringing people from the traditional kind of like everywhere else, not traditional, but everywhere else, a little bit closer to crypto.
And it's a gambling site. You're betting on the outcome.
Betting on the outcome of XYZ.
The election is the U.S. election is huge.
Huge.
So people are betting on who will win, whether Biden will drop out, whether Kamala Harris will take his place, all of these things.
How many pauses, 10-second pauses Biden has in his next debate.
Yeah.
Like everything is up for grabs. And you can create a bet and people can place on either sides of the bet.
You mentioned something else earlier that I already pushed past and I kind of forgot a little bit. So
we're done.
We're finished. Bye-bye. No, I guess, friend tech. Maybe can you give because we didn't talk about that.
Yeah.
So that's another big player here. And I think it's worth talking. Also, something that we're really not going to go into that maybe requires its own podcast is the Telegram Ton ecosystem, which is
I haven't even gone there yet.
That's arguably also, it's a social media app. Maybe it's more of a messaging app, but it's a social app and it now has its own blockchain. And I think, there's a lot happening there and a lot of projects migrating to that ecosystem and that warrants its own discussion. But
so for friend tech, I would say that friend tech was like right place, right time, right build. And it used I think you'd call it a progressive web app. Like it was a web app. It was not a downloadable app. And that's how they were able to add the Web3 or crypto functionality into it. And essentially you would speculate on the value of keys or shares. They ended up changing it to, I think, it was shares then to keys. Of different social accounts. So different people in
speculation around creators, really.
Creators or shit. Like, is a shit poster a creator? I'm not quite sure.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it's the most valuable.
It's the pinnacle of creation.
So it would be a speculation on these. And with key ownership, there was certain benefits. So you could communicate with that creator. So you can go on, say you have keys, and so you set up an account and you can broadcast like you do on a social media platform. However, if I own your key, I might get extra content, extra special videos. There's like a separate private channel, kind of like an OnlyFans type situation, I think, with a chatting backwards and forth, so I can actually chat with you in a group.
Nice save there.
Yeah. With the
OnlyFans, I think. I wouldn't know.
Well, no, I did download the app at one point, but I never got into it.
I'm bullish on creators, so I explore all creator platforms. So I've spent time on OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Just from that perspective, obviously, because I'm not a degenerate in any way.
I'm sure there's some cool shit on there.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you ever buy anything?
Yeah, I've subscribed to OnlyFans accounts. Yeah,
because it's not just porn.
No.
Yeah.
And there's people that play with it. It's pretty much it's porn. And people play with it in interesting ways.
Yeah.
So Friendtech is maybe like a little bit of an OnlyFans, but not porn specific for Web3. So
yeah, but what made it kind of controversial for me was the way that the keys were generated and the way that you purchase the keys. They're on something called a bonding curve. So it's like the first one's this price, the next one's this price, the next one this price, and it kind of they get exponentially, or maybe not exponentially, but they get more expensive on a curve.
So each new user is paying more.
So each new user is paying more. So I have an incentive to speculate on the value of your keys. And that's kind of what led, and this is one of the big things with crypto, as a whole, and maybe Web3 as a rebranding or a subcategory of crypto, is like, this is about speculation.
Yes.
And Friendtech, it was popular because of the money or the chance of money to be made. Which, okay, is it an innovative new social platform for people, or is it a way for degenerates to gamble? Yeah.
I have a couple of questions about Friendtech because I haven't spent much time there. I tried to get in and then I dropped off for some reason. So I haven't even looked at the platform. So I'm a creator. I come in, I have potentially unlimited number of keys that audience members of mine can purchase.
I believe so.
So it's like an open edition NFT.
Maybe you are able to cap it. I know that over the time they've added more functionality, so I can't speak exactly to it, but I believe it's open.
So you're my first subscriber. You pay, let's just for the sake of this conversation, you call it $1 USDC, $1. I know that it's probably not even on that, but you pay the equivalent of $1 for my key.
Let's say.
Then the next user has to pay $1.50 or something like that.
Yeah, or $2.
And
maybe not $2. Yeah, 1.3 or 1. Yeah.
So let's say this continues and my keys start to get to the point where it's $100 per key.
Yeah.
You're my first user. Can you sell?
I sell my keys at 100. So if I believe in you as a speculator on Friendtech, and there were people that were very heavy into this. I mean, there's a lot of June dashboards where you can dig into kind of like the value and the trading value of the different keys. But say I want to speculate on you. You were big on Twitter. You're big on Twitter, and you are going to come across, you're saying, I might do a Friendtech. And then I go bang, and I buy the first 10 keys. Bang, 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 bang. I buy the first 20 keys. So then you had a whole bunch of, KOLs or crypto type influencer people buying each other's keys, pumping and dumping the price of each other's keys.
I love the concept. Super interesting to be able to essentially like invest in a creator and speculate on their potential visibility, but it's ripe for scams and rug pulls and all this stuff. But super interesting.
I don't know, like the rug pull would just purely have to be like, I don't think from a technical level, like the rug pull would be there, but it would be more like, I promise to do this. So there were a whole bunch of people incentivizing people to buy their keys. Like, I am going to use all the ETH from my key sales to then buy this other token and distribute it to my key holder. Or I'm going to do this, I'm going to buy lottery tickets with my key holder.
Yeah, and there's no guarantee of that actually ever coming to fruition. Okay, well, Friendtech, interesting. Just to kind of round this off a little bit, and there's so many other platforms we didn't go too deep into. Sound.xyz is one of them that I find really interesting. It's just Spotify, but just for the sake of time, because we'll come back and we'll do another episode of this sometime in the future, but I think there's like three, like on the spectrum of decentralization, which is also something we didn't really talk about because, some people enter this space with like a vision for ultimate decentralization as the core value prop, whereas other people are not thinking about that value so much. It doesn't mean anything to them or doesn't mean so much. Putting the three major kind of platforms or protocols that we talked about on the spectrum, I think Lens is the most decentralized. most, if not all, activity there is happening on chain. Then you move closer to centralization, you see Farcaster, where my understanding of it is that only the ID aspect of your activity is minted on chain. Everything else is then stored in a database, so it's less decentralized. And then far into the spectrum is Friendtech, which is pretty centralized, also utilizes account abstraction, which for people who don't know about that, it's anyone can sign up essentially. You don't need a Web3 wallet. You just sign up with your email address.
Yeah, but I think if you want to do anything, you have to then, it will create a wallet for you and you have to transfer funds in.
Yes.
Also, I'd say that those two that you mentioned, Lens and Farcaster, are protocol level. And Friendtech is an app.
Yeah, so it's unfair to put them on the same
standalone.
spectrum.
I don't think, and I think like all speculation, if you were speculating on, if there was a token to invest in, which I don't know if the Bonsai and the Degen token, how interlinked they are into the actual functionality of the platforms, I don't know there. But
just to give a little information, so Bonsai is the native currency of Lens. And Degen is the native currency of Farcaster.
I believe. I did not dig into that on purpose because I didn't want it to skew my thoughts of the apps at first. But I will look into it because it is interesting. But my point was that Friendtech is a standalone app. It's going to have a valuation based on like it itself, and the others have a whole bunch of stuff that can be built onto.
Yeah. So are there any closing points that you want to leave our viewers and listeners with?
I think that mainly this podcast or this kind of episode was about creators using Web3 platforms. So I'd say that if you are into Web3 or crypto and you want to grow an audience, I think it's worthwhile kind of playing around on some of these platforms. And you'll find out quite quickly what's a bit more junky and what's a bit more value for you. But is there a standout at this point? No, I didn't see it.
And your summarized vision for where this is all heading, like, is it bullshit? Is it going to happen? Not sure yet.
I have no idea. I have no idea if it's bullshit.
Still up in the air.
It's still up in the air. I think that if it sticks around, it will eventually morph into something that we don't really know what it was in the beginning. Like, we can't trace it back. It's like eventually there will be cool shit built with this technology. I believe that.
Yeah.
At the moment.
Yeah. I believe that too. And
it might not be built right now.
Yeah. Who knows how long, but I think also a conversation here is like, will current Web 2 platforms just eventually integrate this stuff so that the users are still staying on X and Instagram and YouTube because those platforms become Web 3 as opposed to people starting to migrate to new platforms, which is a much more difficult undertaking to try to get all these people who already love these platforms to move over somewhere else. So I think the jury's still out on that one.
Yeah. I think, though, that those platforms probably want to keep people within their space. I mean, maybe Meta does because they have multiple that you can move around. But
Yeah, so there's less incentive for those platforms to develop.
Yeah, they might build their own account abstraction wallets and tipping and things inside. But I don't know how that kind of base functionality of being able to move your audience around, I don't know how, if they want to do that.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
But from the user perspective, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's it depends, I guess, if the audience starts to demand it or expect it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah. So for those watching,
follow me on Fica.
Yeah. So where can they find you, Codi?
I just have Twitter at the moment.
What's your Twitter handle?
Codi Mansbridge.
Codi Mansbridge. We'll put the link in here for people. Yeah. Maybe by the time this video comes out, you do have a couple Web3 social handles.
See.
Probably that's a no. And then, so maybe you're watching this on YouTube. Maybe you're watching it on tape. We're going to upload it to some of these Web3 platforms. So follow us, subscribe to us. You can find everything that I'm working on at Tellr Labs on Twitter. put links to everything. And yeah, just let us know what you think. Are you interested in exploring these tools? Do you think it's bullshit? Is it all just overhyped financial speculation? Or is this really where the creator economy is heading? Genuinely interested in hearing perspectives from people who are creating. So thank you. If you made it all the way through, I apologize. And
Yeah, apologize. Thanks.
yeah,
Mom.
yeah. I don't think my mom's watching. Your mom's definitely watching.
I'm not gonna. No way.
His mom watches Alex Becker. So yeah, thank you. This was a fun conversation. I'm excited to keep developing it and hopefully add some value to some people who are intrigued by all of this crazy shit that's happening in blockchain. Peace. Cool.
Long?